Welcome to Technically Short.
All right. Well, that was loud. looking at the sound waves. Today's episode. First, welcome. I'm Thomas Carney.
I'm Shawn.
And this is Technically Short, as Shawn said. This episode, we decided that we are going to talk a little bit about leadership. And personally for me, this is definitely a topic that I take passionately. I think I said same thing on the last episode. But like, definitely something I take passionately. It's something I am try to take as seriously as possible in my life as time has gone on. So it's definitely something I'm excited to talk about. If you want to dive in. Yeah. So initially, what I really want to talk about first is how I used to view leadership and like what it's, and like talk about what leadership isn't and what it is. And when I first had my first quote unquote leadership position, and Shawn, you can feel free to jump in at any time.
Okay.
When I had my first leadership position, I was a manager at Idlewood Park in Soak Zone, in one of the food stands. It was at the time, what was it called? The pizza place. That's what it was called. It can't be that. It's too simple. The pizza place, at Potato Patch, at a couple of different places throughout the years. I was a manager there, and felt like leadership at the time was more based off experience, and then that it also gave me the authority to just tell people what to do. So, and like that's something I've learned as time has gone on, that like that's not what makes a leader. There are tons of people with tons of experience that just aren't leaders in their industry, that aren't leaders on their teams. And sometimes that's not their fault. That's just not who they are. Other times they are in a leadership position, kind of like I was. I was still like a teenager, but didn't have the leadership aptitude. And so, like, Shawn, what did you think about leadership whenever you were younger?
When I was younger, I thought leadership was the guy in charge. Everybody wants to be that guy. And as I came to find out, it's so different. My concept of leadership now is way different than how I thought it as a kid. And I'm so much better for it. Amplified Church, I have to give them a big shout out because they really taught me in such a way what leadership truly is versus what I used to think it is. So,
what do you think it is now?
Leadership now to me is serving. Being a servant who leads other servants. So for instance, like if I'm the ice cream manager or the pizza manager or whatever, sometimes as a good leader, I am not only teaching people what to do, telling people what to do, but I'm also doing those things as well.
Yeah. No, you're good.
That's good.
I wasn't sure if you're good.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I 100% agree with that. I'm gonna steal something from John Maxwell, and he says this all the time, and it's in a lot of his books, that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And what that comes down to is that everything that you do, and anything anybody does, is influencing somebody. Whether it's influencing people through their social media, through the posts that they post on social media, how you show your demeanor when you go through the drive-thru at McDonald's, or how you're actually intentionally influencing your team to look onto the vision that you've set before them. And it's funny the way John Maxwell kind of puts it out is that like influence is the overall encompassing attribute of leadership, and then there's all these other attributes that fall underneath. That's how I've kind of envisioned it. He never directly has said that, but if influence is, but his books that he has, his books like the one I'm reading right now, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, he has a chapter called The Law of Solid Ground, and that's talking about is trust. Is that if they don't trust that you are solid, they don't trust that you are a leader, then they're not going to follow you. And they believe in the leader before they believe in the vision. Because if the leader is the person putting out the person putting out the vision, they have to believe and trust in that leader before they can trust in the vision that they're putting out. I definitely just jumped around a little bit.
No, I thought you stuck to it. It made sense.
Okay. But yeah, I think leadership now, as versus to when I was a teenager, like John said, it is a drastically different view, and the reason is because I've been able to be around other leaders, specifically around other Christian leaders who are very, very serious about leading well and serving well. Because, like Shawn said, leading isn't telling people what to do. It's not telling people what. It's not telling. Sorry, I had it. It's not telling people what to do, but it's also showing them how to do it. It's also serving. It's also serving them. It's not like a leadership is a servant. A leader isn't supposed to be above. It's supposed to be beside, or even below. Sometimes even below, because that, like Jesus, the ultimate leader, he came down from heaven, and he came down to our level and walked alongside us to show us what we were missing, and to show us and to explain to us what we were missing. And then he went and he died, and he went further down. He went down into hell and paid a price that we could never pay. Sometimes the leader sees. I think there's another thing from John Maxwell. A leader sees more and before the people that they're following. A leader sees the troubles ahead, or sees potential problems before anybody that they're leading ever does.
That's so good.
And then they can preemptively make a plan on when this happens, because it's going to, how are we going to handle it? I'm sure there was a bunch of things happening within the pandemic, where that was almost like a sifting of leadership. I kind of the way I'm thinking about it is because the leaders that were good, the leaders that were great, the leaders that weren't just good but were great are the ones that stuck, and the ones that were okay, maybe some okay and good, maybe some of them stuck, but maybe they were barely holding on, and then the rest of them just got taken away with the tide. And you hear that time and time again with if you listen to a leadership podcast, any leadership podcast, or read any leadership book that is post or current pandemic, you read about that kind of thing. And I think the same thing goes for even the type of leadership that I'm in right now, or Shawn is in right now. With me, I'm a volunteer leader at our young adult group, Inspire Collective, and
shout out to Inspire Collective.
And whenever I started with that, when I started leading that team, it wasn't really a team, in my opinion. It was me and another person who knew how to do everything, and I was there positioned as a leader, but I wasn't seen as a leader. And that was because I wasn't positioning myself as one. Because I didn't feel like I was worthy or qualified to be in that position because the other person knew more than me in a certain area. But that's one thing I've actually learned about leadership. Real quick side note is that leadership, you don't need to know everything about a certain field. Like I said earlier, like you can have tons of experience but be a terrible leader. You don't have to have all the experience. You just have to know. It's going to sound really dumb, but you have to know who you're leading, why you're leading them. Okay, maybe it won't sound dumb. Who you're leading, why you're leading them, and what you're leading them towards, and how to lead. And a good leader, studies leadership. But like going back to production, the ideas of like as I grew in that role, it only being once a week was a slow process, and I would have moments of self-doubt, moments of like I don't belong here, and moments where I was like I don't think that this is a position for me. And as time went on, I realized the error of my own thinking of like, well, if I was put in this position, that's because somebody believed in me and saw something in me that I didn't see myself. So then I was like, okay, well now that my next vision was like, okay, well then I want to actually live up to that. Make sure I'm actually living up to what that person saw. And if that's in me, let's find out where that is. So like that's when I started more actively thinking about who can be on this team, who can be on this team, who would work more cohesively, who would be a good addition to production, and would also be able to be like, okay, I'm not here to do a job to put on a show of lights and sound and stuff. I'm here to help people with their experience with the Lord. And there's a whole other topic of how production sets the atmosphere in these instances, but that's not for this conversation. Shawn, like, what are you thinking right now?
Honestly, I'm thinking how a good leader leads is by serving, right? And I think you were such a good leader because before you got the role, you had the heart for it. You know what I mean? You had the desires for it. And I think a lot of people, they want the role, but they don't have the heart or the desire or the passion or the call to do the job.
Yeah.
So if you don't have any of those things and you're trying to be a leader, you're going to do it horrible. Like we have that sometimes in the police department, sometimes you have that in the military, sometimes you have it as a pastor, sometimes you have it as a teacher, sometimes you have it as anything in life, right? Anybody who's in a leadership position who doesn't want to be there hurts other people.
Yeah.
And it happens because the heart is not behind it. Like, I know there's tons of great cops. There's tons of great pastors. There's tons of great teachers. There's tons of great people in leadership. But the reason why they're so great is, I would say, 3 reasons. 1, God called them to it. 2, they have the passion for it. And 3, they think about how they can help others while doing it, but they don't let the role go to their head.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's good. I think that's good. I don't really have too much to add to that, but I think bring us to our last point, talking about how, as a leader, or pretty much, like, if you want to lead anybody, if you want to influence anybody, you have to start with yourself. And that change starts internally before you can go and try to focus on anybody externally. One of the verses I really like from the Bible, my favorite verse is Philippians 4:8. And I'll just read it real quick. It says, "Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things." And I think a lot of people, like, they think about such things like, "Oh, you're telling me how to think." Like, that's like, no, I choose that. That's my decision. That's something I can control. And newsflash, it's not right off the bat. Not just through instinct alone. And I think whenever you're able to practice the skill of thinking of the things that are noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, or praiseworthy, whenever you're able to also take those thoughts captive, as it says in the book of Corinthians, like, and take any thought captive that isn't of God, which means it's not of love, it's not of joy, it's not of something that is good, and you give it to Him so it could become something of Him. If you can't do that internally and you're just bitter, and you're just bitter, you're angry, or you're gossiping, like, that's not something that makes a good leader. You have to be able to lead yourself before you're ready to lead anybody else. And I think last episode we talked about trials. And we talked about what our kind of experience with them. And I think one very positive part of trials is that, this is kind of something I didn't touch on last episode, but I wanted to, is that the trials, they're not like, this is kind of a revelation I kind of had the other day, and like these trials are not for defining you, they're for refining you.
That's good.
Therefore, these moments of hard trials, the moments where you're suffering, that's where your true self will come to the surface. You'll either fall further down because you don't have that solid foundation below you, beneath your feet, or you're going to rise further up. You're going to rise to the occasion. And I think those experiences, a lot of the time, at least in my experience with me, like, it's what's caused me to become a better leader. It's because it's forced me to have more of a humble mind. And look at myself and be like, well, crap, I can't do this all on my own. So, like, who do I trust? Who do I trust to have on my team? Who do I trust to help me out in this certain situation so that I don't have to do it on my own? And I think that's, after starting with the trial of, like, learning, like, okay, well, if it starts inside me, of being able to turn my thoughts captive to God, and then going to somebody else and leading them to be able to do the same, then what's the next step after that? Shawn, I'll let you take it.
Honestly, I feel like that was good, man. Like, honestly, a great leader has great counsel. There's a scripture in the Bible for that. I know the opposite scripture right now, which is bad company corrupts good manners. I was trying to figure out the one with great scripture. Great leadership has good counsel. But there's a whole point of, like, the people you surround yourself with as a leader, especially as a leader, should be great counsel. Your inner circle has to be great counsel. Why? Because you're leading, and if you're not having somebody pour into you positively, then they're pouring into you negatively. And if you're leading, you need great counsel, so anytime you're doing something wrong, they can hold you accountable so that the people under you don't get hurt. And how do people get hurt by leadership is when the leader doesn't have great counsel and he's too high and he doesn't have nobody to hold him accountable. So then when he falls out of line with what God called him to do or what he's supposed to do, he just makes people follow him blindly. And when you're following blindly behind a leader, that's where all the scandals and all the bad stuff happens. And it happens because you take yourself from focusing on God to focusing on you. And when you focus only on you, that's where the problems lie, because we're not perfect. But if you focus on God as a leader, the people under you will get the love, the joy, the peace, the refining qualities that you get from all the trials that you face in life. You'll be able to use those qualities to help them be refined so they can get better. And it's like a trickle down effect. Whatever is you're focusing on God, then all the good stuff God's pouring onto you pours onto the people who are under you and the people around you. And then it just keeps going down and it keeps going. It's a flow. But if you move from the flow as a leader, that's where everything goes haywire.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I had something earlier. I said when you're in the trial, you rise to the occasion, but that's not really true. Either you fall or you rise, and really it's both times you fall. It's just how far you fall. It's not. It's like you might have heard this saying before. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training.
Oh, that's good.
And what that means is again, last episode I talked about preparation. You prepare for the trial. So if you're right now, I'm not in a massive leadership position, but I'm preparing like I am, because one day I believe God has something out for me that will be bigger. Maybe not. I don't even want to say better, because I love what I do right now, but I would say have a bigger point of influence than I have now. So I want to be ready for that when it comes, and then also be ready for the trials when they come, because so I think if there's something that you want to be, would like to do in the future, if you see yourself as a leader, if you feel like you want to be a leader, you need to start now. You need to start preparing now, even if you don't have the position. I just told you this yesterday, Shawn. You've heard it before I said it, but it was the best time to plant a seed was 10 years ago. The
second best time is now.
Yep, there we go. And if you haven't started preparing yet, start it. There's tons of books out there, tons of courses, tons of free courses, tons of paid courses. Be careful with those, by the way. Maybe we'll have another episode on that.
Paid courses actually should be an episode. Make sure you get a good teacher when you're paying for money. For sure. Man.
There's the whole story behind that. I actually do want to make an episode on that now. Be a short one, maybe. But no, I think we kind of covered a lot. We covered a lot in this episode, and it's I think it was a nice, compact one, too.
Absolutely.
So if you like this episode, definitely give it a like. Share it out with your friends.
Give us 5 stars.
Give us 5 stars on Spotify and whatever platform you can rate us. And give us some comments on Apple Podcasts if you have already. I'm sorry I haven't seen them yet. I'll have to look, because Shawn has access to the account and I don't. But yeah, guys, honestly, really appreciate everybody that's been listening so far, and everybody that comes up to us and says that they're really liking the podcast. I've had tons of people. I shouldn't say tons. I've had a few. I've had a few people come up and say that they really do enjoy the podcast, and say that each episode gets better and better. So I really appreciate everyone that has said that. And I also...
We love our technically short family.
We'll talk about that off the podcast. But I have another thing I wanted to say. But no, Shawn. That's to wrap up. Let's make this a short and sweet little and you know how these podcasts typically end with something fun. We're gonna wrap it up. I don't really Shawn,
Yes.
what's your favorite anime?
Anime. Oh, that's a hard one. It'd be between Naruto and Dragon Ball Z. I guess Naruto has a better storyline, but Dragon Ball Z I've been watching since I'm 5, so that was like a lot of years. So I would have to go Dragon Ball Z just because of it's where I started.
Yeah.
Technically Speed Racer, but at the time nobody knew Speed Racer was anime. I didn't even know that for a while.
Dude, I love my One Punch Man.
Punch Man's good.
It's not my favorite, but it's like one of my favorite like short animes because that's like a really like one season anime, isn't it? Am I wrong?
2.
2 seasons. Okay, short season. A lot of the ones are short. A lot of the really good ones are really short, and it makes me mad.
Me too. That's like the worst. You find the best anime of all time, and it's 12 episodes.
And you don't even realize it. You don't even realize it. Like, oh, when's the next season coming out? It's like, oh, it's not. This came out in 2014.
The worst pain of all time. My brother really hates that too.
Oh man. But all right, guys. Again, thank you for listening. Again, share it. Subscribe, do all the things, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.